On September 25th, 2020, Super Run 100 created the challenging hack-and-slash roguelite game called Hours on Roblox. Hours consists of multiple classes you may play that all have different abilities and stats. Mix and match that with time abilities called Tempo. Select upgrades to synergize with a build. Fight a variety of enemies with unique boss fights. Unlock new characters, tempo, and even challenges to challenge yourself more to spice up the game a little bit. So let's get into it. The game starts you off with an intro. Nice. You'll be booted to a menu where you can select your class, tempo, and add-ons. Ignore this fifth class that's unlocked later. So these other tempos. You start off with 4 classes: Invader, which is a pure melee type class; Prophet, which is also a melee type class but focuses on being a tank as well; Witness, which is a slow attacking character with range attack that deals a lot of damage; and Artisan, which drops down units to fight for you. In the first row here, you can select the difficulty, weeks being the easiest and seconds being the hardest. This will determine the enemy's health and damage output. The second row is more of like making your runs more fun or easier, I guess. And the third row are some modifiers to make the game harder, but we'll get into that later. On the right here, these are tempos. Tempos are like an ult. It will charge up over time in battle, and you can use this as an advantage. If you start up the game for the first time, you'll only have the first one, which stops time for a few seconds. To get more, you have to play the game more and do other tasks for them. Invader has a normal melee attack that does 6 damage. Pressing Q will make you do 50% more damage, and whatever damage you do, 25% will give you health back for 3 seconds. Right clicking will do a spin attack that hits multiple times, and left shift will do a dash that deals 24 damage. Prophet has a slow melee attack that can be used at short range that deals 20 damage. You have a dash that has 2 charges so you can move around more, a big charge up melee attack that does 100 damage, and a regen ability. Depending on how many charges, the more it heals. To get more charges, you have to stab enemies or get them through upgrades. Witness has a melee attack that does 16 damage, a kick that does 10 damage and staggers enemies, a shield that gives a temporary 25 HP boost for 4 seconds, a smite ability that does 40 damage and stuns enemies for 2 seconds, and a passive ability that reduces all cooldowns by 10% when a kick damages someone. And finally, Artisan. They do a standard slash attack, dealing 12 damage, a parry move that blocks in front of you for 0.25 seconds that does 5 damage and staggers melee attackers. Build a stationary turret that has 40 HP that fires 4 bullets per second that does 3 damage each and will despawn after 20 seconds or is destroyed. Fire a gun that shoots up to 20 bullets that each do 3 damage for 2.5 seconds, and a passive ability which regenerates 2 health per second when below 35% health. Go towards the edge to begin, and here's where the roguelike element kicks in. You get to choose one of 3 upgrades for your character. You want to try and find synergies, which means to find upgrades that work together. The first choice here doesn't really matter too much, but it will later. When you select an upgrade, you will enter the first stage. This one isn't really bad at all. You'll have to face 2 enemies at a time. Also, every enemy in this game is different from one another. If you're having trouble hitting them, you can enable an auto lock feature, so whoever is closer to your mouse will get hit. You can effortlessly fight them, and you can still hit them. When that meter below your health bar fills up, hit space and you'll use your tempo, depending on the one you select. That stops time for a short period, and you can hit them and the damage will later register. There are 4 stages in this game, and the 3 have 10 enemies you'll have to fight. Then, a boss. The first boss you will fight is called Equinox. He'll dash towards the player, dealing 8 damage. He'll roll forwards, doing 8 damage. He'll do an acrobatic move. He'll have a series of slashes, doing 8 damage. And when less than 66 of his health, he'll run to the middle and summon a bunch of rays. They do not do any damage, but the player will receive double damage for 10 seconds. And that's double damage towards you. You're not going to do double damage towards the enemies. When less than 33% health, he'll go back to the middle and summon a massive dark tornado, dealing 5 damage for every 0.2 seconds you've been in there. and healing for 200% of damage dealt. The only way to avoid this is to get to the edge of the map. After he is killed, you'll get to choose another upgrade. See if the upgrades you got can synergize with the previous upgrade, or just pick one that sounds good. The second stage puts you in a map with rain. At least the last map had something cool about it, but this map is just alright. At least the stages give you the flat surface to move on. You get 10 brand new enemies to fight that all do different things, like this guy who sets down traps, this guy who runs for 2 seconds then casts 1 spell per hour, and this guy who has a big cannon. The boss here is called Bloxer Man. He is a ranged attacker. When the boss spawns in, he slaps the ground and spawns in a shockwave that does more damage the closer you are to the center. He will spray a bunch of nails at you that does very little damage, however it does add up if you get hit by a bunch. He can also use 2 hands to fire the nails when below 80% health. These nails have less accuracy but have more knockback. When close to him, he will impale you, stunning you for about 3 seconds. He'll make nails rain from the sky that have a slight homing effect. After attacking, getting staggered, or being damaged 5 times, he will sink into the ground and teleport to a random spot in the area. When at 60% HP, he'll spawn in a clone that mimics his nail burst attack, and a second clone at 20% HP. Also, each clone has 1 HP, so you could take one out and they'll just not attack during that cycle. When at 40% HP, he'll activate a shield that protects 20 HP that he has. This will reflect projectiles back and staggers. When he's in a lethal state, he'll get out, spawn in a bunch of tripwires that when you step on them, 5 nails will shoot from that angle. He'll also have a shield that covers 25% of its HP. If you don't beat him in 20 seconds, nails will start to fire from the tripwires. After you beat him, you'll get to select your last upgrade and make this one count, because this stage will get dicey. Stage 3 will contain more of the harder enemies, like this guy who shoots his beam, this demon guy, and this man who drives a car into you like Walter White in Marvelous Playground. This stage got really hard, and I died really quickly. The boss here is called Ronin Alpha. He is a melee attacker that will block a lot of your moves. Also in this map, a giant will rise up, and this is an obstacle to watch out for when you battle the boss. Ronin will slash you, spin around with his katana, throw his katana, and jump into the air and slam down with his katana. He'll try to run behind you to do any attack mentioned before. When this is happening, he'll block all incoming damage and staggers. Oh yeah, be careful about the giant in the background. He'll do damage if he slams you. That one's kind of self-explanatory. After defeating Ronin, you'll get this dramatic transition to the next stage, which is a standalone boss fight. First, you must dodge a series of attacks like these white pellets that gravitate towards the center, a beam that gets shot out, some more beams that go crazy, more beams that rain from the sky in such a brutal way, more beams, but these are more angled. See a pattern here? And one last attack with a piano right before the fight. Now, depending on what you chose, the boss will get that as well. Same character, same upgrades, you're fighting yourself basically. If you kill him, they have a second phase where they become stronger. Some of the attacks you are basically forced to dodge, and yes, they are no longer you. They go into that final form that is just insane. I can't imagine what this guy is like on higher difficulties. After you kill him, if you do, the whole map will change and you have to make your way to a platform, and right there is the end of the run you did. And I have to say, they really put in a lot of effort into these battles. Almost like Undertale. Sorry. I really like the enemies and bosses. Now, I don't want to be that guy, but I'm gonna be that guy. This game was a bit short. Now, that could just be me, but I have played roguelite games before, and they could go up to like an hour. I'm not asking this game to be an hour, but this run felt kind of short. I mean, it's not really fair to the game. It's a little indie game, Roblox, you know, but this was what, around 12 minutes on like the normal difficulty. If there is anything I can ask in this game, it's more bosses or maybe an extra stage as an option. I also recognize that map changes a bit every run, so maybe like a new boss for every map difficulty that is different. I know that sounds insane to do, but eventually we can get tired of fighting these same bosses. Upon beating the game for the first time, you'll unlock Vestige, or Prestige, however you want to say it, who is a ranged class. He can shoot normally, that does 8 damage each, fires a charged up shot that does 48 damage, leap backward for more movement, dash forward into enemies dealing 32 damage, and a passive where your regular shot has a 1 in 8 chance to deal double damage and heal for 5 HP. It's a pretty cool class. You can also enable challenges, like when you activate your tempo, the game straight up kills you. An April Fool's multiplayer prank where you get boss to fight with you. This isn't really a challenge, more like a modifier. A swarm, which instead of 2 enemies spawn at the same time, you can have 3 now. And even an endless mode where you just find endless waves of enemies. Unlike the normal runs you do, you can pick up to 6 upgrades in this mode, I think. There isn't really a goal, just play as long as you can. There are so many challenges you can unlock in this game that can still make the game interesting. I want to touch on something here real quick, the monetization. So there are some modifiers, a character, challenges, and tempos. You can't get them unless you buy a game pass for 400 Robux. Now, something here bothers me just a little bit that could be kind of pay to win. There's a modifier that allows you to pick up all 3 upgrades, and one that makes tempos more powerful. In my opinion, that's kinda OP. As for the character called the Dreamer, yeah, he's pretty strong. Now, you don't just pay and get the character, you have to earn it, which is actually fair. This is more of like an expansion of the game than it being pay to win. In conclusion, Ours is a very fun hack and slash roguelike game. With its advanced AI and in-depth combat, this game really becomes a challenge while simultaneously being enjoyable. The game does feel a bit short, and fighting the same 4 bosses can be tiresome to people who play the game a lot. However, while with its wide variety of challenges, characters, modifiers, and tempos, the game offers more interesting gameplay options. A few eyebrow raises at the monetization where some modifiers seem pay to win, but a great majority of that expansion is still something you need to work for. Still, this game is something that everyone should try out once and experience despite my minor complaints. I'm sure in the future this game will turn to something greater.